and let's get going. Okay, so welcome to everyone, and I'm going to now start sharing my screen and give you a little introduction as to why we're here. So for a long time on OptiClass, there was what we called pro or professional setup, and that's existed on OptiClass for over a year, and that allows schools and teachers to place their logo on the platform, certain parts of the platform. And we've had a lot of feedback from some of the teachers that have been using our pro feature. And what many of our teachers have asked is that they could be not only have their logo on the platform, as you see here, but actually bring the logo onto the lessons themselves and run OptClass on their own domain. So not using optclass.com, but using your own domain, something such as mydomain.com or imagreatteacher.com or imagreatteacherinbelfast.com and so forth. So that's what the business setup is all about. We still have the pro. The pro still exists as it always has. But over and above the pro, there's a business setup where you get to run OptiClass off your own domain, and you get to put your logo on the lesson slides. So that's what we're really here today about, and that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to demonstrate for you today. So right now, so if this was a pro account, if you're using a pro account, you would still have your own branded login page. So you would have a URL that looks like www.optclass.com/login/your school name. Now, the big change here is that we no longer need to run your login page off an optclass.com URL. You can actually put whatever you want as your URL. You can elect to use your own domain. So my domain is esl/school.online, but your domain could be, like I was saying, teacher.com or your eslteacher.com or whatever domain you go out and purchase. So we wouldn't provide you with a domain. You would go out and buy the domain and select your domain, and then you would, on your setup, if you elect to use the business setup, you would then elect to use OptClass off that domain that you have gone out and purchased. And so throughout today's presentation, pay special attention to the address bar, because every URL on OptClass, instead of showing optclass.com, it's going to show demo.eslschool.online, my personal domain. So I'm going to log in now as the teacher in my teacher account. Whoops, and I got the wrong password. Now I got the correct password. Thank you. And as I was saying, so normally the domain here would be optclass.com/teacher, but it actually now is demo.eslschool.online/teacher. So all those domains are now running off my own personal domain, and that's part of the business setup. So we can see that my logo is present on the interface here, which is already existed under the professional setup. But I will now come over to the student side of OptiClass. So just like the teacher side, the students now log in on your login form, which is on your domain. And now my student side is logged in. And I'm going to go back to the teacher side, and I'm going to choose to launch a lesson today. I'm going to launch a TOEFL lesson. And the reason why I'm going to launch a TOEFL lesson is because we're releasing our TOEFL series this month. So it's a new series on OptiClass, but no other reason than that. I could be launching any lesson on the platform. And I'm going to choose to enroll my student Jose in the class. and I'm in the Off to Class classroom. I know most of you are experienced users of Off to Class, so I'm not going to go through the basics of running a lesson. But what I'm really, the reason I'm really excited to come in here today is to show you that instead of the Off to Class logo being on the lesson content, you've got my logo is on the lesson content. So that's the other big thing about the business setup, is that it actually allows you to brand the content. So there's no Off to Class branding on the content. So as I move through the slides, you can see that every lesson slide is branded with my logo. And I'm going to come back over to the student side of Off to Class. And they press join lesson to join my lesson. And likewise, on the student side of Off to Class, you can see that their logo is present. That my logo is present on the student side of Off to Class. The other big upgrade for the business setup that I should probably mention is that, as many of you know, there's a lot of email notifications that occur on Off to Class. So email notifications, so generally when you want your students to take an action. So if you assign them homework, we will notify them. If you choose as the teacher, we will notify them by email that they've got a homework assignment, if they've got a placement test, if you've reviewed their homework. And now under the normal setups, or even the pro setup, those emails come from info or students@offtoclass.com. That's the email address they come from. Now under business setup, they come from a generic address. So they actually come from esl/school.online. So that's where, that's the other great thing about the business setup. So that's a lot of what I wanted to show you as far as how the business setup looks. I'm going to come back to my teacher account. And then I'm going to get into a little bit more about setting this all up, because running off your own domain isn't as simple as just clicking a button. Because like I mentioned before, you're going to have purchased a domain, and that belongs to you. That has nothing to do with Off to Class. And you're going to choose to run Off to Class using that domain. So there's a couple of different steps and places involved. So I'll walk you through a little bit about setting this all up should you decide to use the business setup. So I'm just going to close this lesson and come back to the lesson library. Okay. So first off, how would I actually purchase the business setup if that's something I wanted to do? So like everything, like all the actions to do with your subscription. Actually, no, I should step back 1 second. How does the pricing of the business setup work? So the business setup is one of our setup options. So by default, all accounts on Off to Class are on a basic setup, which has no additional cost. And that would be a kind of a standard account where it's all Off to Class branding all over the platform. Your logo doesn't appear anywhere. Now, our intermediate step is the professional setup. So that's this pro setup that we've had for quite a long time. That's a one-time fee of $150. So it's just a setup fee. It's not a subscription. It doesn't allow you, you will still need a subscription to teach your students, to teach your active students. It's a one-time setup fee. And the pro costs $150. And that's the existing pro. So you get that branded login page, you get your logo on the platforms, on the interfaces, on homework assignments, and on the placement test. Now, the next step up is what I've been showing you today, the business setup. So it's all the pro branding, plus you get to use your own domain, plus you get to put the logo on the platform, on the lessons, plus you get to send the email notifications from a generic email address. So that's the business setup. And once again, these are setup fees. So this is independent of your subscription. Your subscription for your active students is a different story. This is just the setup to be able to brand the platform. So these setup fees are only paid once. They're one-time fees. So, and they're truly one-time. So I'll give you a little scenario. So let's say I've got some clients, and these are real-life situations, who have paid the pro setup. They paid the $150, and they were teaching with OptiClass for a year. They had an active subscription. Then they left and weren't teaching for a sabbatical for 6 months, 7 months. Then, so they didn't have an active subscription for a period of time. Then they came back and restarted their subscriptions. The pro fee that they paid way at the start of their initial subscription is still valid when they restart their subscription. So the logo is still up when they restart their subscription. So it's truly a one-time setup fee. So these fees and anything to do with your subscription and your package, everything can be changed on your account page. So what I did was click profile, this pink button in the top right here, and then I clicked on account. And so as you can see, the business setup has already been set up on my account, and I can also see that I'm on a subscription. So I can change the plan here by pressing this change plan button. And if I was on a basic or professional setup, I would have the option of upgrading my setup option here. And there's only one other important part I want to mention is that for teachers that are already on the professional setup, you can actually upgrade to the business setup and we'll count the fee you've already paid, the $150, against the cost of the business setup. So you can do this incrementally. Obviously, $550 is a big investment. So you could opt, if you want, to do the professional setup first for $150, and then decide to go to the next level and opt for the business setup. And we would only charge you the net difference, so the $400. So I could go professional setup, $150, 6 months later, decide to go up to a business setup, and I would only be charged $400 to make that jump. So once you've set this up, once you've purchased the business setup, I want to show you a little bit about what's involved in setting up your domain and loading your logo. So once you set this up, you'll have access to a page here, which is called your setup page. And the first step to do is upload your logo. So uploading your logo is the really easy part, or the easier part. You have here the ability to upload your logo and just select the logo from your computer. And we give you the dimensions here. It's 260 by 80 pixels is the maximum pane size. And generally, the more of that pane you can take up with your logo, the more prominent your logo is going to be, because it's going to be taking up more of the total pane size, of the canvas size for your logo. Generally, we would recommend you using a transparent logo. And the reason for that is if there's ever a conflict on the lesson, if the logo is touching any of the lesson content, it will be transparent, so it won't block any of the lesson content. And making a transparent logo is really simple. We even provide you a link down here of a free web service that'll convert your existing normal logo into a transparent logo. So once the business setup is set up on your account, you will go to your setup page and load your logo. That's the first step. And you can always, there's a really important point, I get asked this a lot, you can always change your logo. Nothing is permanent here. So once you pay the setup fee, you can change your logo as much as you want, and you can always restore the logo to default, back to the OptiClass logo. If your logo looks terrible and you get a bit confused and you can't find the logo that looked good, don't worry. You can always go back to the default setting. That's not a problem. Now, the next step is to tell us what your domain is going to be. So tell us what domain you want to run OptiClass.com on. So generally speaking, right, most teachers in most schools will have a website that presents themselves. So most schools would have, I would purchase a domain, let's call it myschool.com. And I'll bring up a little text pad so I can provide the real example here. So most schools would own a domain, or most teachers would own a domain. It says something to the effect of, let's call it myschool.com. And you own this domain. And if I go to myschool.com right now, I'll probably see a picture of you being a great teacher, or of your school, a lot of people learning, and some good information about why I want to come learn with you. And so you wouldn't want myschool.com to replace OptiClass.com, because under that scenario, that nice page about you and your school wouldn't exist anymore. We'd be pointing to OptiClass.com. The more usual scenario is that you would want to set up a subdomain. So you would tell your host that you actually want to set up a subdomain, and what that domain would be is you could decide it to be students.myschool.com, or you can pick whatever you want. It could be learning.myschool.com. And it's actually that subdomain that you want to point to OptiClass.com. So it's students.myschool.com equals OptiClass.com. And the nice thing about that is that great page that you set up on myschool.com, which shows you as a teacher and as a school, we won't conflict with that. And what you do is you take that subdomain, students.myschool.com, and that's what you'd actually pop in here. And that's what you'd put in there, and then you'd save the domain, and that will whitelist that domain on our end. So that will allow you to run that as OptiClass.com, and then that will create this folder for you. That will set up the files here on this download setup folder under that domain. And if I click display instructions, I've also got the detailed instructions that I need to set this up on my host. Now, as far as actually implementing this on your host, we would generally recommend that you have some technical knowledge of how servers operate before attempting this. And if you don't, we would suggest asking a friend or hiring a freelancer to help you out. It isn't, for someone who knows what they're doing, for someone like Serdar, for example, we're talking about 10 minutes of work. It's very, very simple. But for someone like me, who has no idea what they're doing when it comes to playing around with a host, it would take me a lot of time to do this. And some of the cheaper hosting options don't necessarily provide great support and can't necessarily help you a lot in this regard. So generally speaking, we would suggest you have some technical support to help you do this. As you can see, we have very detailed instructions here on exactly what you need to do. And we give you the setup folder. You just download it and you provide the instructions to your technical resource, but we cannot actually load the files for you. And there's a number of reasons for that. Basically, we can't actually commit resources to logging into your host, and you wouldn't want us in your host anyways. That's your That's your setup. You don't want us playing around with your website. So just an important point is that we cannot actually load the files for you. We can give you guidance and you've got your instructions here, but you will want some basic technical resource to help you upload these 3 files to your host. But once that's done, it's done. So basically your URL is whitelisted, your host is up, and then your login would be this actual URL. And if this was a subdomain, I would take this URL and put it on my website. I would probably make a button that says students login here. And I would have that button point to this URL. And then that would allow everybody would log in through my website. They'd go to my website, they'd press students login here. That would take them to this subdomain and show you exactly what I showed you, your branded login page, running off your URL, and it would go from there. And then the tool, the idea of the business setup is it really looks native to you. It looks specific to your business because you've got your URL, you've got your logo everywhere, including the lesson content. So that's most of what I wanted to run you through today. I'm sure there will be plenty of questions. I'm just opening up the QA button. We've got Kieran here from Valencia. And actually, Kieran, I know Kieran actually already has the business set up, but he hasn't actually set up the domain yet. So Kieran, I think today's session is good for you because it will give you an idea of how to set up the domain when you take that step. And Jeanette, I have a fundamental question. My logo onto Off Class. Isn't this adorning myself with borrowed plumes? Absolutely. So you know that one of our reasons for existence at Off Class is to help teachers. We don't sell Off Class directly to students. We work with teachers and we work with schools. And the idea here is that we're trying to make teachers are busy, and especially if you're managing a lot of students, especially if you're teaching independently, and you might even have a day job in a classroom. So you have a busy life, and we're trying to make it easier for you, and we're trying to offer you an option where you can make the work we've done at Off Class look native to you and your students and the experience you're trying to give to your students. So the answer to your question is absolutely. But the benefit of doing that is to make your life easier and to offer kind of a unified experience for your students. I noticed someone put a question in the chat. I'll just check that out. Oh, Tina said hello in the chat. Hi, Tina. Yeah, so let's use the Q&A button in the top left. And if anybody has any questions, we've got another 10 minutes allocated to today's session. So you can just let me know. I'm recording today's session, and anybody that registered, I'll send the recording out within 24 hours. Does anybody have any further questions? Maybe I did such a good job presenting. I mean, it's not the easiest topic to present on because I had to get into kind of server theory and whatnot. But maybe I did do a good questions. Maybe I did do a good job. John is asking, are you saying that it will be possible to have a login via my own web page? Yeah, so John, that's a really important point. So John is asking, am I actually going to have a login through my web page? And actually, here's the important point, is that it's going to be even simpler than that. So this is actually how it would look. So what you would actually do, sorry, just give me a second here. So this is what you would do. After you set up the domain, all those steps I showed you, your URL to go to your branded login form is going to be whatever you set it up as. So whatever you whitelist and whatever you load to your host is going to point to your login page. So for me, my login page is at demo.eslschool.online, but yours is going to be at John Sykes or students.johnsykes.com or what have you. You will then take that URL and you'll make a button on your website that says students login here, and that will point to this page. But as far as the students are concerned, they will experience that they are logging in on your website. Even though you haven't had to go through all the pain of creating a login form and a backend on your website, all you have to do is make a button that says students login here. They'll press that and they'll be pointed to this login page, which is running under your domain, and they will log in here. But as far as the student experience, they will feel that they've never left your website because they're still on the same URL and they never experience any off to class branding. So that's the important point. You don't need to go through the pain of setting a whole backend on your website. It's still just good old off to class out of the box, but you point to your login page on your website, and from the student experience, it's as if I logged in on your website. Yeah, and Jeanette's asking, can I choose to have my logo if I don't have my own website yet? Absolutely. So that's actually, Kieran is on the session today. That's what he's gone with. Kieran really just wanted his logo to appear on the lessons. And as soon as we enable or you upgrade to the business setup on your account, you'll be able to load your logo and it will start appearing on the lessons. And at a later time, when you're ready to set up the website and the domain, you will be ready, it will be enabled on your account, and you can set that up. Or you could actually choose to, instead of building your website, what you could do is you could choose to purchase a domain and purchase a hosting package and only run off to class. Don't bother running your own website. So instead of having to go through all those steps of setting up a subdomain, you could go out and you could go buy JeanettePhillips.com and you could host that. Most of the hosting packages offer, like, you can buy a domain and buy a year of hosting for a certain price. So you could go out and purchase that, and then you'd own JeanettePhillips.com and it'd be hosted. And then you would just take those files that I was showing you and get your technical resource to upload those to your host. And then your offtoClass.com would be running off JeanettePhillips.com, and you don't even need to build a website. That would totally work. And yeah, John, that's students logging in. John's asking whether all the information I just said about making the button that says students log in here, that would apply to any time they're doing any action on Off to Class or on johnsykes.com that involves learning. So anytime they're going to join a lesson, anytime they're doing homework, reviewing lesson summaries, taking a placement test, anytime they're logging into the platform, they would press that students login here button. Yeah, so James is saying he already has a button that points to logging in off to class. Absolutely, yeah. If you're fine with your students going to offtoclass.com/login and seeing the off to class logo and logging into off to class, that's fine. But if you want to set up a unified branded experience where it's all happening natively on your domain, on your website with your logo, then this business setup would be for you. If you wanted that experience for your students, to remove the existence of off to class from your experience, that's what you would do. Okay, any more questions? Thank you, by the way, for asking the questions. I was getting a little bit nervous at the start that there was no questions. Okay, it sounds like we're good here. It's the last couple weeks of the Northern Hemisphere summer, so I won't take. Oh, John's got one more question. Great, go ahead, John. We're ready. Oh, there we go. I think we've got John's question. Oh, Jeanette. Oh, Jeanette's asking, can we see how the student notifications work? Yes, as long as I have some emails in my Hotmail, which I believe I do. Let me just log into my Hotmail account and find one of the emails for you. This is, of course, my personal Hotmail account. Can you see my screen right now? Yeah. Great. Okay, so this is what the student notifications will look like. So if you opt to use our business setup, instead of the notifications coming from eslschool.online, they will now come from no, sorry, instead of the notifications coming from info@oftclass.com, they will now come from this generic email address, students@eslschool.online. There we go. And I think John has popped in his last question. Great. Do I put a button on to OftClass login page? No. So John's asking, do I put a button on my website which links through to the OftClass login page? No. So after you set up the business setup on your account, you're going to have OftClass running off your own subdomain, of your own domain. And that's going to be all set up. And then your button will actually point to that subdomain. So if your link is currently johnsykes.com, you're going to set this all up to run off students.johnsykes.com. And that's the link you will put in your button. And that's how you will have that kind of unified experience, so that you're never really leaving your website. Great. So John's got that. I was able to log in and show Jeanette one of our generic emails, which is great. And sounds like that's it. It's the last couple weeks of the Northern Hemisphere summer. I won't keep you guys any longer. We've all got a lot of work to do once September starts. So thanks a lot for everybody for joining. And of course, you know, you can always ask us questions. You know how to reach us normally through the platform and through email. So we look forward to your further questions. Take care. Bye-bye.